Sunday morning, on the way to Kansas Speedway for the Kansas 400. See if Juan Pablo Montoya can keep up the good work. See if Tony Stewart, who's my pick to win the race, can bounce back after several disappointing weeks. See if Jimmie Johnson and Mulhern are going to cool off. Maybe they ought to cool it. Heat's on. NASCAR's watching. So's everybody else. Don't need to have a runaway here in the chase. It's looking like it's a two-man race there after Loudon and Dover. That's Kansas. Jeff Gordon should be a good pick here. I've been picking Jeff Gordon the last couple of weeks, and he hasn't done much. And Tony Stewart should be a good pick too, but he just doesn't seem to be in a good mood right now. And neither does his teammate Ryan Newman. Pressure's on. Have they run out of steam? Regular season, they were tough. Postseason, not so good. Kurt Busch, well, he was going strong until qualifying Friday. He'll have to come up to the pack to be a contender today. George Gillette, the guy who runs Richard Petty Motorsports, or the guy who owns Richard Petty Motorsports, or the guy who owns Richard Petty Motorsports and runs Richard Petty Motorsports and finds the backers, not quite sure. Every time we ask Richard a question, he says, ask George. We asked Casey last week. He said he didn't know who's the boss. They fired the competition director, Mark McCardle. Well, we finally got George to sit down and talk yesterday. Saturday at the Speedway. He just flown in from the Middle East. Had some really interesting things to say. Said they might build as many as 14 short tracks over there in the Middle East. Have a series. Stock car racing. I don't know if he's just blowing smoke for the Prince of Saudi Arabia, whoever that guy is. But he wants the money for the Liverpool soccer team. And I think there's some problems over there. George didn't want to talk about that at all. No comment. That's all he said. But he talked for 31 minutes about everything else. Pretty sharp. He's committed to Casey Kane and AJ Allmendinger. Everybody else apparently is up for grabs. He wants at least a 3-car team next year, hopefully a 4-car team. Wouldn't talk about Paul Menard. Did say the merger with Robert Yates' son, Doug Yates Racing, is on target. It's all in the hands of the lawyers right now. Paperwork being done. He says he expects no problems. They'll be ready for Daytona. In Fords. In fact, he says he wants to see one of his guys in a Ford sometime this year. I think Texas, Phoenix, Homestead, somewhere along there. I think it's maybe Talladega. Not sure what they're looking at, but he says that the Ford engine, the new Ford engine, is so much better than the current engine he's got, the Dodge engine, in terms of cooling, that it's going to change the aerodynamics of the car. We'll see how that plays out when he gets, probably not Casey in the Ford, but maybe AJ. AJ in a Ford at Talladega. It's a good place to find out about aerodynamics. Me, I'm just thinking about the Kansas 400 today in the chase. Actually, I'd be more concerned about the Kansas 400 and sort of like to forget the chase. Remembering back when the chase was like 2 or 3 men coming out of Daytona in July, and you could sort of concentrate on winning races and who was winning and all that, and the chase was sort of like in the 3rd or 4th paragraph of the story. Now it's like every story's got to lead off with the chase. Who's doing the chase? How's the chase going? I don't know. It's getting a little much. Racing should be about racing, not about championships. Championships come if you race well. But I'm thinking it's time to pay attention to the racing. And today, Jeff Gordon versus Tony Stewart. They both need good runs. Jimmie Johnson and Mulhern may need to cool it. Maybe due for a off weekend. They haven't had too many of those this year. But we'll see. Mike Mulhern from MikeMulhern'sNASCAR. Kansas Speedway, dead ahead. We'll see what today's Kansas 400 has to bring. Mike Mulhern from MikeMulhern'sNASCAR.